Well, welcome back to the third Saturday in October, your SEC water cooler podcast for the rest of us. I am Bradley. I hate Florida, and I could barely watch the end of this game. Well, I could barely watch any of it. But we'll get to that. Find us online at thirdsaturdayinoctober.com, on social media at TSIO pod. If you'd like to support the show and be part of our Saturday um, college football group messages, find us on Venmo at TSIO pod. I am Bradley. I'm here with my executive producer, Chris. Chris, how are you?
Man, I'm doing good. It is good to be here. Good to see your smiling face. And it looks like we're kind of in the same boat when it comes to uh, Bama fandom, Tennessee fandom, which is coming off of not great performances a couple weeks ago into last week, which should have been some redemption and just felt like more mediocre performances with a lot of stress at the end of the games again. So I'm hanging on as a Bama fan, but as a buddy and friend, it is great to see you. Shout out to Jared for you and he doing such a good job this season on the podcast,
Yeah.
and I've been listening and enjoying what I hear every week, man. So I'm glad you guys are continuing to carry the torch forward.
Awesome. Well, we have absolutely loved um, being able to talk college football and have missed you. You are the link that connected the two of us. So glad glad that we could kind of continue this on, and you still join us from time to time. Um, so let's jump into these games this last week, because like it was frightening. It's October. Things are starting to get scary. Um, so let's jump right into these games.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
So first on the radar is Alabama hosting South Carolina. Chris, I'm just gonna let you take this one.
Well, Josh Pate over there on well, what is this podcast called now? Or I guess it used to be Late Kick, but now it's the Josh Pate football program or something like that.
Yeah.
He calls October Cocktober because of the way that South Carolina can really mess with some stuff and get in your face. And I was really hoping that Bama, after a, it's hard to even say this still out loud, a loss to Vanderbilt, would come back and just blow the doors off of South Carolina and show them why they are worth a top five or a top 10 ranking. And almost got beat by South Carolina. So it was frustrating to watch. It was humbling to watch, especially the defense. Feels like that they left it all on the table after the going into halftime during the Georgia game a few weeks ago with Bama. I haven't seen hide nor hair of the Bama defense since then, other than Malachi Moore kicking a football randomly when we're losing to Georgia, and having that kind of black eye on the program of just looking like sore losers, which we have been. And I would say it was because we're not used to it, but regardless, you're supposed to know how to take the wins and take the losses. And so haven't liked what I've seen. Offense, I guess this is our first game without our 17-year-old, because you have to say 17-year-old when you're talking about Ryan Williams.
Yeah.
Our 17-year-old wide receiver, held him touchdownless finally, or I guess the Gamecocks did. So not a lot to get really excited about, especially going into the official third Saturday in October week where we're playing your Vols in just a few days. It doesn't give me a lot of room for optimism, but that is SEC football, and it's exciting to see that the games are so close. I just hate that the games are so close, with my team being the one that should be pulling away from teams, and they're just not. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. But it was not pretty to watch on Saturday.
Heck,
Thoughts on the game from your perspective?
I mean, Alabama has just looked sloppy for a
Yeah,
couple weeks. I mean, they looked sloppy that second half on defense against Georgia,
yeah.
sloppy against Vanderbilt, sloppy against South Carolina. And it's just proof that South Carolina can keep up with the top of the SEC. All they need are a couple things to go their way. And I mean, credit to Vanderbilt. a week ago, really executing everything they needed to execute to really take care of business against at the time the number one team in the country. But I think that the SEC is compressed more than ever this year
Yeah,
with Vanderbilt, Kentucky, South Carolina. Um, like they are really challenging the the top of the top.
yeah,
And you've seen some close games with other teams as well. I mean, Arkansas is no slouch. Mississippi State uh, it can still put up points from time to time. Um, it's 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 crazy. It's
yeah.
chaotic, and I absolutely love it.
Here's an interesting thing that I was thinking about this morning as I was putting a few notes together and just kind of looking at the helmet schedules for the SEC, just kind of looking across because this is the first year that we haven't had the divisions in SEC play. Alabama doesn't have its typical rotation of we're playing Mississippi State and we're
Yeah.
playing Ole Miss and we're playing Arkansas, we're playing LSU. So far we have not played one team in the SEC that we would have typically played. And that doesn't change this week playing Tennessee, and that doesn't change next week playing Missouri. Well, I take that back. I know we always play Tennessee, but the fact that so far we have an SEC played what would traditionally be SEC East teams, and Alabama traditionally being an SEC West team. Again, we've played Georgia, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and about to play Tennessee and Missouri. All five of those would typically be games that we would only see maybe one, maybe two of those opponents on an off year because we always play Tennessee. But I just thought that was interesting that we won't play an SEC West team until the very end of the season with LSU and then with Auburn. So just interesting. Again, everything is new this season. And so just add that to the list of like, wow, didn't expect to be playing only SEC East teams up to this point. And then the out of all of those, like we are what 2-1 in SEC play so far. I definitely would not if you would have said, okay, at this stage in the game, you guys will be 2-1. Who would you have lost to? I was like, well, we lost to Georgia, but I guess we eked by Vandy and South Carolina, but we barely beat South Carolina, and we got shown the door in Nashville a couple weeks ago. So
Shown the door by
wild
the
days.
doors. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
it I did not expect both Tennessee and Alabama to have a loss going into this next weekend. I'll
Yeah.
that didn't I would think that one of us would be undefeated.
Agreed.
And so it's just it's wild. So next up, Missouri travels to Massachusetts, and I need to talk to whoever decided that Missouri can go to Massachusetts and that Vanderbilt can go to Georgia State because this does not make sense. But Missouri does take care of business quite handily, 45-3. By the way, if we didn't announce it before, Alabama squeaked by South Carolina 27-25.
Yeah.
So Missouri really pouring on the points at UMass. Thoughts on Missouri after they got beat last week and now kind of a revenge game? Sorry, UMass.
Yeah. What was it? They lost to A&M the week before, right? Um,
Uh,
if I'm remembering correctly there.
yes, yeah, yeah. They
Yeah.
got thumped by A&M
Oh, that's
41-10.
right. That's right. Because at that point, we're still looking at uh, like that was the week that Alabama, Tennessee, and Missouri, all like preseason highly favored SEC teams, all went down on the same day.
Yeah.
And
Plus,
again,
plus Michigan, number 10, Michigan lost. Number 11, uh, Southern Cal lost. Number 8, Miami should have lost.
yeah,
And number 25, UNLV lost. Like there was a lot of losing in the top 25 a
yeah,
week ago.
yeah, yeah. And then coming off that Alabama loss, Georgia coming off that Alabama loss the week before that, you looked at it and like, ooh, okay, so there's a lot of teams up here in the top, and now Georgia's already lost. Like, what is this going to look like? But then, in a matter of hours, Tennessee and Bama and Missouri all went down. So, like, other than apparently Texas and Texas A&M, we're all not. It's too early to say middle of the pack, but definitely haven't. been undefeated up till this point, and A&M not even undefeated either. But at least they took care of Missouri and
Yeah.
then Missouri and then UMass. So yeah, they're proving that they need to be up there. And I guess if you look at statistically, they are ahead of Texas right now because I think they have one additional SEC win. And I know all that will play itself out. And here I am still talking about Texas A&M when we're talking about Missouri. But I guess all that to say that, even if you do get a Missouri in UMass up there, at least they took care of business like they were
Yeah.
supposed to. So it's nice to see them rolling on along. But this is still a lot of season left. I guess not even. Are we at the halfway point? I guess we are at the halfway point. Maybe this weekend counts
Yeah.
for that.
It seems like we're pretty close. If not there, we'll call it
Yeah.
halftime. Um, yeah. I mean, I don't know what to think of Missouri. But but taking care of business against lesser opponents, that's what you
That's
have
what
to
you're
do.
supposed to do. Exactly.
Um, then we had the Red River rivalry, yeah, for the first time in the SEC. And Texas really took it to Oklahoma, winning 34-3. Texas is really the only team in the SEC that's truly handling business. They are beating opponents by multiple scores. I don't think they have a close game yet. Now, they have to play Vanderbilt pretty soon. So can
True.
Vandy do it twice in 1 year? I don't know. Um, it is at Vanderbilt, but so keep that in mind. But right
Wow,
now,
Nashville getting some good games this year for real. Like top tier
man,
opponents inside Vanderbilt Stadium. So
yeah,
good for them.
and those goalposts, the so I guess it was shocking that Vanderbilt had enough fans to tear down the goalpost. Two, they knew how. I mean, they're engineering, so I guess they should know how to tear them down because they know how to build them. Um, the most surprising thing is they took those things down Lower Broadway, which is packed on a Saturday night with bridal parties, like bridal showers, pedal taverns, a lot of people who are bumbling, stumbling around, and you're trying to weave these goalposts through there to throw them in the river. Props to Vanderbilt for that feat. Um,
Props to
but
them for real.
but yeah, so Texas is the team to beat. They have carved themselves out as the best of the SEC at this moment, and I hate to say it because Missouri, their first year in the conference, represented the East in the SEC championship game. A&M came in and I mean, you and I have watched A&M beat Alabama, or I guess listened to. We've witnessed some of those early games or early days of new teams joining the SEC. I don't like this. I like when teams come in, kind of get woken up like Oklahoma has to what life in the SEC is like.
Yeah.
Um, Now there's still a lot of football to play and a lot of SEC football to play for Texas, but Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, like it's hard to go wrong either way. Even though I think it's Quinn Ewers' job until he gets hurt or uh, he moves on to the NFL. Um, what do you think about Texas?
Well, basically carbon copy of what you said. I mean, even with I believe if I'm not again, I have a lot of stats and things up crammed up in my brain for we'll call them traditional SEC uh, foes as well as my own team of Alabama. So I'm not I'm still getting used to the Oklahoma and Texas side of it, but I think they've got several of their starting running backs or leading running backs in their on their team out. So they have a diminished group of at least the running backs, and they're with Quinn Ewers was out like 2+ games. But even with all those little pieces that you think, oh, there's some issues for them, or that there's a way for them to stumble, they haven't.
Yeah,
And having that old saying that like if you've got two starting quarterbacks, you've got none, or something to that degree of like you really need one starting guy. But when Quinn Ewers went down, they barely missed a beat. And with Arch getting his first starts, but looking so dominant, I mean, he's just like fitting the bill that everybody has said about him for years. So, even if your starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers, who could be a Heisman contender, goes down, that he comes right out of the game and they put Arch Manning in, how do you stop that? And so again, I know that they've got a couple of teams to play coming up, as including Vanderbilt coming up and Georgia this weekend, but they look pretty unstoppable at this point. So unless something crazy goes wrong, and I agree with you too, it's hard to watch the new people come into the SEC for us to say, oh, we'll really show them. And it has been kind of par for the course with Oklahoma, but with Texas, just like you said, I remember us traveling over a decade ago when A&M and Missouri first came in, like, Missouri is going to be representing the East. This doesn't feel right.
They're about as
But
far west as you can get. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't feel right geographically, nor did it feel right for the newbies in the SEC to be dominating.
Right. Yeah. It did not make sense at all. And to your point about playing Georgia, I think that's going to be quite an interesting game. Um, uh, with it being in Texas, in Austin, that's going to be tougher. Like that's going to be raucous for Georgia. And I don't know what the line is, but that's whew.
Yeah,
I would love for Georgia to really show up and show us the Georgia that we've been more accustomed to seeing the last few years. I know they're not the same
yeah.
team, but hey, I'm not here for a long time, but I'm here for a good time. Let's go have a good time and show them what SEC football is like
Yep.
down in Austin. So I'm pulling for you, Bulldogs.
Well, hey, and on that note, I just looked it up. It looks like an early spread on ESPN is 3.5 points for Texas.
Yeah.
So it looks like that, again, with home field advantage, is about that same spread. So it looks like they're pretty evenly matched. So this is going to be an exciting game for everybody to watch. Other than if you're not an SEC homer like we are.
Yeah. It's going to be a heck of a weekend of football. And you know, I mentioned this earlier as we look at Georgia, Mississippi State. Mississippi State has been able to put up some points from time to time. They hung around with Georgia, and I mean, hung around it kind of a loose term, but Georgia only wins 41-31. So
Yeah.
that's closer than I expected. Um, and this isn't the Georgia we're used to seeing. Um, but they have found ways to win against Kentucky, against Mississippi State. They nearly found a way to win against Alabama. I don't know what that halftime speech was, but it had to have been a heck of a speech. Um, so I've got a lot of questions about Georgia, especially going into this weekend against Texas. But what are your thoughts having seen Georgia nearly come back in a second half, much like Alabama has done to the Bulldogs several times in the last few years?
Well, again, I think Carson Beck uh, is he seems to have found his rhythm.
Yeah.
And so I think that he's bringing what needs to happen. Did he have an interception, or he's been doing well,
Yeah.
even though he hasn't been perfect. Especially again, basically since the second half of that Alabama game, moving forward, he's I don't again whatever Kirby said in that locker room to motivate both Carson Beck and the rest of the team, impressive, very impressive. But um, you look at the numbers again. They won with Georgia won coming off of the last 2 weeks, but it made it a lot closer with that Mississippi State score to only be off by 10 points. So
Yeah.
again, it's not they're they definitely have more question marks than Texas going into this, and so by that rationale, I'm going to give the edge as well as home field advantage to Texas. And so again, I think that they're the team to beat. But it is going to be weird to still be in October and to think of the Georgia that we all know as being a two-loss team if it does play out the way that it looks like it could this coming up weekend.
Yep.
So I'll give the lead or the lean to Texas just because they're playing so dominant, and they haven't given me any reason to think that they can't continue to dominate.
Yeah. I think there's a very, very, very good possibility that the SEC championship game winner has at least one loss, possibly
Yeah,
two. Who
yeah,
knows? We'll get there. Um, Next was Tennessee beating Florida in overtime 23-17. I hate Florida. I will say it every time we play Florida. I hate Florida. I just wish that, and I know there are a lot of things like when you go to overtime, it's a shortened field, so your play calling's a little different than when Florida missed the field goal. Like I don't know. They looked a little lifeless on defense after that. But I wish Tennessee could play with that intensity the whole game, and then we don't have to play overtime because that overtime it was not necessarily a chunk play, but it was like 5, 6, 7 yards at a time, and it did not take long for Dylan Sampson to get in the end zone. Why can't we do that the previous 60 minutes? We saw a little bit of it, but come on, like I don't know. I'm gonna have heart issues because I love college football too much, and it just stresses me out. But man, I hate Florida, and I hate these games against Florida.
and it does seem like it's one of those where Tennessee and Florida are just going to be it's typically it's going to be a tight game, and I know that there's been years where it's been lopsided for one way or another, but again, going all the way to overtime, I agree with you. Like I'm just a scrub fan that just enjoys watching this, but why can't you do a 2 minute drill at the end of the first quarter or at the end of the third quarter? Why do we only have to wait until the game is at its most pressure filled to start doing these 2 minute drills, the dinking and dunking down the field enough to get into field goal range to kick it, to try to win it at the last moment? Like, where is all of that motivation when it's not the final 2 minutes of either the half or the game? It's
Yeah.
just ridiculous to me. Or in overtime, as to your point a few minutes ago. But yeah, it's bonkers. I mean, again, I played football for 9 years. I know that you have played a lot. Why can't you get up in those last few moments, or why do you have to wait until the last few minutes to get up instead of like going with it and then maybe having a 28-point cushion against the presumably first place team in the entire country, but then squander it all? Like it's just it is maddening. And again, the heart attack, I know, is one of those things that we joke around about because it is so difficult. But man, I do feel some heart palpitations when it comes on a Saturday and it's
Yeah.
late in the fourth quarter, and I still have no idea my team that's supposed to be winning by multiple touchdowns is barely hanging on or having to come from behind. It is something that feels like it's going to send a lot of us to an early grave.
Yeah, I I know one of Tennessee's issues is like they play not real fast to begin a drive. As soon as they get that first down, like it's lightning speed. I don't know. I don't know why you can't do that from the onset because it's not. I mean, I know you could potentially be giving the ball right back to your defense, but it seems that that is that is part of Tennessee's execution is we know exactly what we're going to do and we know how to do it faster than you do. So I don't know, maybe just start the first drive, whether it's off of a punt or off of a kickoff. Like you've got that TV timeout, call your play, get ready as soon as that ref is ready to go. Like snap the ball. Let's go.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Where's your
That
confidence right now? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your confidence for the Vols?
overall or going into the third Saturday in October.
Oh, that's a good uh, defining point. How about both? I'd love to just hear maybe uh, while we're here talking about the Vols, where
Yeah.
you are coming up this weekend, but just so far as how they're supposed to be as a team and how they fared so far for you?
I'm overall, I'm a 6, maybe a 7. Like I
Hmm.
tell a lot of people, I'm very excited going into every weekend. I also am not sure what to expect
Yeah.
because I know that I've seen it. Um, our offense can can have trouble scoring points. We've got a redshirt freshman quarterback. I know it's Nico. Uh, well, now that I'm recording, I can't say his last name.
Yeah,
Iamaleava.
you have to say it without thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, he's as good as he is. He's still a redshirt freshman, and he's still getting you. I mean, I don't know that he's getting used to like the speed of the game, but the speed of recognizing defenses and coverages and knowing how fast SEC competition is going to close on the ball.
Hmm.
Those windows have gotten tighter. Um, so going into the third Saturday in October, I'm at best a 5. Um, I know Alabama can play defense. I know they've got an offense. I know Tennessee's defense has struggled a little bit. I I mean, I think against Florida, we got some breaks. Um, as Florida got close to the end zone, I think we got a few breaks our way. But we got to play better than that if we expect to beat Alabama, Georgia, Vanderbilt. So I, my confidence is pretty shaky right now.
Yeah. I would echo that same thing. I would probably put my confidence in Alabama as a whole around 6 or 7, and this weekend I'd say 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, again, I don't know where our defense has been as a whole. And again, we can put up some magical numbers, Alabama. I'm talking about right now, if we wanted to, but those feel like those miracle plays are few and far between. I know we had several of them in the first part of the season, but it's like, did we use all of our luck then? Have we used all of that to build up some sort of fake confidence that we actually don't have? But because we can throw some magical, cool pass from Milrow to the 17-year-old Ryan Williams, that it's going to create some sort of interesting highlight play on Sports Center. Like you can't rely on that week in, week out. So I don't have a ton of confidence. I feel like it'll be a good, interesting game because I think that Alabama and the Vols will both show up for it. But there's part of me that feels like that we've got some false confidence that we're still leaning on, that we're going to get handed to us. Because again, I mean, like we lost to Vanderbilt, Alabama, and then pretty close to losing to South Carolina. And I wouldn't put either of those teams in the same stratosphere as the
Right.
Vols. So hopefully Bama will show up, but it sounds like that we have about the same amount of confidence going into this game for both of our teams.
Yeah. Absolutely. I may not have any nails left on my fingers at the end of 60 minutes or heaven forbid overtimes if it gets there.
My
Um,
gracious. Yeah.
and speaking of shaky confidence, how about Ole Miss losing to LSU in overtime,
Man.
29-26? Ole Miss is starting to run into trouble with back-to-back losses. Um, I mean, LSU is another one of those teams that I'm sorry, I've got a lot of friends that are LSU fans. I did not want to see Brian Kelly come in and be successful at LSU. I know it's hard not to be when you've got a good roster,
Yeah.
um, and you've got the talent pool that Louisiana does. Um, but uh, I mean, I think there was more talk about Ole Miss going into this game than LSU.
Mhm.
LSU has not had the headlines that Ole Miss has had this year. Maybe that's due to an early season loss. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, so Ole Miss goes down to LSU, a night game in Baton Rouge. It's hard, and Ole Miss found out.
Yeah, I think they said something after the game about the a stat about Brian Kelly at night games. in Baton Rouge, and I think he's what 13-0 or maybe 14-0 at this point. So that definitely is something to pay attention to. But you're right. There are all of these teams, the Georgias, the Tennessees, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, like the top half of the SEC, and then everybody kind of trickled down below that, not knowing where it was going to be. It is interesting now to see all of that preseason hype and first of the season hype with Ole Miss, and now looking at those two losses, that's difficult to come back from. If anybody can do it, the Lane train is proven time and time again that they can get up for a fight. But with two losses already and with a lot of heavy SEC play to go, it's sad and maybe disappointing for
Yeah.
the Rebels so far at how they've played out. Because again, I would have said that they would have handled LSU pretty easily, but no. Again, it's one of those that maybe there's a lot more parity in the SEC this year than a lot of people gave it credence to.
I think you're
Because
right.
man, there's a lot of it seems a lot tighter than in years past.
Yeah, I think everything got compressed. I think um the bottom of the SEC has gotten a lot better, maybe at
Mm.
the expense of the top of the SEC.
Yeah,
Um, and it's fun to watch. It's hard to watch when it's your team
yeah,
losing, but it's fun to watch outside of that. And speaking of fun to watch, our final game of the week, Vanderbilt goes to Kentucky and wins 2013. And I've got four words to sum up this game. Don't sleep on Vanderbilt. Chris, your thoughts?
man. Yeah, it is. At the beginning of this season, they what is it? The oh shoot, now I'm forgetting the name of it. I think it was like college football shorts or something
Yep.
like that. They do a great job
SEC
every week.
shorts.
SEC shorts, yes, they do a great job, and they've had Vanderbilt like with this king robe on and everything, and this cool music that comes on, and it was so funny up until that Alabama game where Vanderbilt handed Alabama their first loss, and then it's hard because
What?
they are
Because
now leading up to it.
yeah, because they've got that going, and then they lose to Georgia State, and it's kind of like wah wah,
Yeah, yeah,
and then they beat Vanderbilt, and it's oh. So if you're an SEC fan, you don't watch SEC shorts on YouTube, go find them and just this season, just go back and watch. They do a brilliant job, and I know they turn them around really fast.
so fast.
Yeah, SEC shorts is good. There's a couple others that are really great at these SEC football. Um, I don't know if I'd call them vignettes. I it's the personification of each team and fan base. They're all
Yeah.
great.
It's like if Saturday Night Live met SEC football.
Yes.
What would a sketch look like from both of those two entities? And again, you're right. There are several of them out there that I enjoy watching each week. But what they've done with that Vanderbilt, the swagger that they have, they've totally earned it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, I think they lost what to Georgia State and
Yeah.
to Missouri, so they
Yeah.
have two losses, but only one
They,
in the SEC, and they
but
have
they
everything in
played
front of them
Missouri
still.
close.
Yeah,
Like it was close. And it's like, okay, Vanderbilt's playing with, I think at the time, number nine, Missouri. It's like, whoa. Like we've seen them beat Virginia Tech. We saw them lose to Georgia State, but then they play Missouri close. Like I so going into the game against Alabama, um, like I thought Vanderbilt would play well. I didn't think that they play that well. But
yeah.
now you better believe that I've got it circled on my calendar. I hope that other teams do too. I hope my Vols especially have Vanderbilt circled because that is a game you do not want to overlook.
No, especially where you guys have them the last game of the season,
Yeah.
right before the SEC championship. Yeah, that's where Tennessee needs to really be making a case for itself to try to put itself in prime position for the college football playoffs, regardless of how the SEC championship plays out.
Yeah.
Because there's still a chance. But man, with so many of these SEC teams now with a loss in SEC play, it's still wide open, man. Regardless of if Tennessee and Oklahoma I'm sorry, Texas and Oklahoma are new to the conference this year. No signs of slowing down from it being a fun conference to watch. And then also a fun conference to cry over every now and then too, especially when you see, the lowly Vanderbilt Commodores carrying their goalposts down just miles away from your house because they beat your supposedly dominating team that wouldn't have given Vanderbilt much of a game at all. And Vanderbilt just mopped the floor with Bama. So again, I hated that it came at the expense of Alabama, but I got to take my hat off to Vanderbilt and the fan base. I was, as much as I wanted to cry that day, I was so excited for them and what they did. And then later that night, one of Vanderbilt's biggest fans, Nate Bargatze, hosts Saturday Night Live and even says it on the stage before the show went off, like Vandy beat Bama, which again absolutely should do that, and
Yeah.
was so excited and proud for the whole fan base. I just hate it had to come to the expense of my team, because if it had been another team that they had beaten like that, I would have enjoyed it that much more. But I still got to take my hat off. They outplayed Bama. And they deserve to be there. And they outplayed Kentucky again this week and showed why they are much higher in the SEC rankings than any of us would have really given them credence for at the beginning of the season. So it's a lot of fun watching, man. A
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Go Doors and go Chaos. I mean, this season more than any other, I think, since we started Third Saturday in October, has it like chaos everywhere.
Well said.
And Chris, thanks for taking the time to join us again. Hope you can join us again soon. Because we've really loved having you on the podcast.
Oh man, let's please do it again soon. I'd love it if all three of us were able to be on at the same time, and hopefully we'll be all back on the microphones and on the cameras when all of our teams have had a chance to win. I know that this weekend is going to be difficult for one of the two of us this weekend. I fear that it's going to be me, but again, chaos reigns supreme.
Yeah, and I mean for everybody else in the SEC, they probably think hoping we could both lose. So,
So true.
It's good to be hated. We were not for a long time. So I'm glad to be kind of back at that status. But Chris, thank you very much. I For old time's sake, I gotta hear it. I'll cue it up for you. Heroes come in all sizes. Roll Vols, baby.
Roll balls, baby. Nice to say it again.
Tailgate, man cave, living room, pregame, burgers, ribs, chicken wings, chip and dip, pregame, scotch and